How's it going? Our work today is pretty clearly laid out before us. Officially day 2 of solo show prep. We've got a series that we're working on, and I know exactly what I need to do today. I need to get as far as humanly possible as I can on every painting every day. So yesterday we composed a photo in Photoshop, and today we're going to be painting it. Pretty straightforward, you know. It's important though not to, especially when you've got a big workload ahead of you, and I don't know if you think this way, but I do sometimes, and it tends to affect me. But whenever I've got a big push ahead of me, it seems to be accompanied by an equally large serving of resistance, right? I forgot what the author's name is, but he wrote that book, The War of Art, and he talks about resistance in there. And I find that whenever I have an especially long, tedious day ahead of me, that's kind of when I feel it the most. Whenever I'm going in for the purpose of experimentation, or just kind of like an open-ended painting session, it seems to be less so that I feel resistance. And I don't know why that is, but I've just become increasingly aware of it over time. And so I think the way that I safeguard myself against that is by reminding myself that it's really just the same thing, and I'm going to get into the same kind of state, right? But for some reason we tend to build up the day's work, and think about these kind of heroic sessions that are going to be 13 hours long and stuff like that, and in reality there's really no difference time-wise between the kind of slow and go mode that I talked about yesterday, which probably aren't the best words to describe it. It was just kind of off the dome, but I forgot what I was saying again. Oh, they're probably not the best words to describe it, and really the only difference is really just the intensity or the type of focus that we're engaged in. Because the lengthwise, the hours are more or less the same. Of course, when it's around showtime and things are kind of getting down to the wire, it's definitely a requirement to put in some extra, especially when you're on a short deadline, as I am now. But this sort of thing does not really affect me in a negative way. It seems to affect me quite the opposite, in a very positive way, where I feel like I'm rising to a challenge. I feel more alive than I normally do. I feel more engaged with my work, and generally, just a lot more excitement about kind of what's going on and stuff. I just need to get gas real quick, dude. All right, man. Yeah, so just don't build up the day too much ahead of you. Just keep it going. Keep it simple, dude. That's exactly what we're gonna do today. We're just gonna get in there and just go straight through as much as we can, document as much of the process as we can. The paintings are, again, it's a pretty bite-sized and manageable scale. We've got 24 by 30, which is a foot and 2 feet by 2.5 feet, which is a pretty fun size that I've not really worked in a lot before. As a matter of fact, I've always kind of avoided the mid-scale. For some reason, I am primarily drawn to working very tiny or working very large. and the kind of middle scale just doesn't seem very exciting to me at all. But for this show, I figure let's try something new. You know, we can't be too dogmatic with our approach to things, and you know, I find that sometimes I can fall into that in ways that are not really, that are kind of unexpected to me. For as much as I like to talk about, you know, being open and untethered by, you know, these kind of like larger preferences or art world conventions and stuff like that, you know, for as much as I talk a bunch of noise about it, I am myself a perpetrator of said crimes. So, you know, we're going to try to battle that a little bit by pushing into a scale that is not larger or smaller than I'm necessarily, you know, used to working, but just kind of right in the middle, which makes me uncomfortable. I think the thing that makes me uncomfortable about it is that it just doesn't seem like an exciting scale. You know, for me personally, the most exciting paintings that I've ever seen have either been very small or very big. And not, you know, I'm not discounting. It doesn't mean that there's like none out there, you know, like, oh, what about blah, 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 blah. I know, I get it. Yeah, there's tons of great works that are in the mid-scale. I'm just talking about, for me, the works that I remember being moved by the most have either been, you know, bite-sized or life-size, you know, so it's like I tried to just kind of stick within those two, but for this show I feel like it's calling for a good mid-scale, mid-size. The Nest painting series, those were all massive, and it was a requirement, I think, conceptually, because since we were painting gaming setups, you know, we wanted to create an environment where the viewer can actually feel like they're stepping into these places, especially because I was coming to it from a sort of empathetic point of view, and kind of like not judging, you know, people by the condition of the space or the preferences that they have, etc. And I thought that the way that I could maybe coax that same sort of empathy out of the viewer was by making the space large enough to make them actually feel like they're standing in it, you know. And with these, it's not really the same case, you know. I don't need it to be quite as immersive. So the mid-size makes sense conceptually too, and that's an important thing to consider as well. You know, is every aspect of the work can aid your central concept if you allow it to, and if you take the time to kind of turn over all of those stones, everything from color to size to like how high you hang it in the gallery. I remember, for example, Marlene Dumas years and years ago. She had a show at, I think, the MoMA or MoCA, the one that's in Los Angeles, and she had a portrait of, you know, this little kid, and I don't know if it was or just looked like Hitler, but like he kind of looked like a little dictator, and like a baby dictator, and she hung the little piece very high on the wall. And so you when you were looking at it, you had to like crane your neck upward to look at the painting. And that to me, like, that's when I was, you know, in art school, and that to me just has always stuck with me. And it was like, man, every aspect of the artwork can aid or hinder the central concept. And so that's something else to think about. And that's all I've got for you guys for now. So we're just gonna get to work. Let's go. All right, dudes, pretty excited with the progress that we made today. Here's a quick look at the reference on the bottom left. And of course, we got the two perspectives here, so you can see the colors that I'm mixing, as well as the action on camera. I sometimes, you know, it kind of varies for me, but today I'm pre-mixing the colors that I'm just using per section. So right now, just I pre-mixed all of the colors that I needed for the flesh tone, and I'm just applying them, you know, normally as you would dark to light. Other times I will pre-mix, you know, the entire painting's worth of color, and it really just depends on how I'm feeling, how I'm flowing, how I'm working that day. I find that sticking to, you know, those kind of things a little too rigidly, it can kind of start to weigh you down after time, you know. And so sometimes you want to give yourself the freedom to work out of order and stuff like that. And it might seem like, a very small and simple thing, but it really adds up. And it's like a sort of morale booster to just kind of like switch things up every once in a while, even in the most minor way. So for me, that just meant pre-mixing the colors that I needed at the moment. If I needed any kind of variation, I'll just do it on the fly. And yeah, just pretty straight application. Today, as you can see, there's like really no washes. It's all going on alla prima. And, I'm just working wet on wet and pretty opaque. I have my little metal dish there with a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, but I'm being pretty careful not to use a whole lot. I normally like my paint pretty runny, but with this application it definitely needed a little bit more of a thick consistency. And then here I am mixing just colors of the hands and some of the lighter values, and then going back in and reapplying. I can usually get the majority of the painting done, or of a section done, in about 3 or 4 values. I normally prefer 4. And this section was no different. With this part, with the dress, it was 3. So I've got the dark going on right now, and then I actually didn't pre-mix them. I'm just pre-mixing each color here on the fly. So right now I'm mixing the mid-tone, and it's just basically going over the entire painting, or over the entire area that hasn't been painted with dark. And then from there, of course, I will hit the highlights. But this one was just to get some coverage on it, and that's kind of the way I like to work. I normally don't like to butt colors up against each other. If I can avoid it, I'd rather layer colors on top of each other. So here you can see that I laid down that mid-tone and then went in with, or actually haven't gone over it yet, but I will in just a sec, go in with some lighter values. But I'm just doing some touch-ups on the face here and the hat. And actually at this point I did mix the lighter values, my bad. I just can't see because the camera quality is just a little messed up, so I'm sorry about that. Everything else is, again, I'm just like working details and I'm working kind of section by section. So I did the visor and then the tennis racket, and now of course I'm working on the shoes. And with the shoes I really didn't do any pre-mixing. It was just more a matter of mixing everything on the fly and just making sure that colors are as accurate as I can possibly get them. The goal today, of course, was to try to get as far as humanly possible, and that I most definitely did. Right now I'm mixing the background color, and that's going to go on next. Of course, starting with just a thin, or just an outline of everything, just so that when I go back in with a bigger brush, I don't make any mistakes and overpaint any of the careful detail that I just made. So I'm going in with a smaller brush and just painting the contours of the entire figure, the racket, and even the shadow shapes with my background color. And then as I'm doing that, I'm also modulating some of the edges while I can. So basically, like on the dress, for instance, as it gets closer to the back and it recedes further from the camera, you're going to get a little bit more of a blur. So I will diminish the edge where the back of the dress and the background meet. So it'll be a little bit diminished, and that just kind of helps bring the eye towards the focal point, which is the front. And then now I'm just applying in a nice thick opaque layer the background. And I like to just work by picking a pattern and then applying. There's not really a whole lot of magic to this part. It's just but I am trying to keep it very opaque, and I'm trying to keep the brushwork in a uniform direction. This is another kind of little tip that you don't really need to take, and it's not super necessary, but it does help when you get to the photographing stage. If your brush work is sort of directional, let's say left, right, and then up and down, you're going to pick up glare in different directions. Whereas if you have a uniform set of brush strokes in a flat area, especially like the background, and you keep the brushwork nice and uniform,
you'll be able to control a lot better the way that the glare hits your paint. Otherwise, I find that, yeah, when it's kind of all over the place, you get a kind of distorted glare of the camera, and that's really just something that, you know, you have to worry about if you're photographing, and really something that shouldn't too much affect your painting, but it's something that I like to consider because most of my work does end up getting photographed and put online. And here, just adding some detail. And as you can see, man, we actually got through the whole freaking painting today, which is amazing. Like I was not expecting that we would get this far, but coupled, I think, with just like the excitement of the upcoming show, and then of course, man, of course, can't leave out the boys, you know, in the Discord. This entire time that I've been painting, I've been plugged into the Discord with Kellen and Logan, Dakota, but I like to call him Dakota. But yeah, man, that is, I think, a thing that like is also very much overlooked. Synergy, which I think is like a really, really cool thing that we have access to now in this day and age, especially with Discord. So basically, I'm in there painting, Dakota's in there painting, Logan's in there painting, Kellen is finishing up his day at work, but we're just in there, man. And then, you know, the days off, whenever Kellen's painting, he's in there too, and we're all just like vibing and painting. And I find that when you get this kind of synergy going, you're able to push a lot further, and the time just goes by so much quicker because you hear everybody working, you hear the little scrapes of the canvas, you hear the mistakes, and then, you know, you're just kind of vibing off of each other's energy, and it's a really kind of magical, amazing thing. And while, you know, I'm kind of hesitant to promote the Discord too much because we have such a nice group in there, I do want to open the opportunity to other people because it's been such a beautiful and beneficial thing for me, and I would hate to deny that to anybody else. So again, I'm going to put the link to the Discord in the description, and you know, you're more than welcome to come join us and just hang out and paint. You don't have to talk or participate. You can always just listen and vibe out with us, you know, while you're doing your thing. So that's always an option. But that's all I got for you today, man. We got the whole thing done in a pretty good amount of time too. It was a long painting session, but we got it done for the day, and tomorrow we're going to rinse and repeat. So you guys have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.